The 1986 NBA draft had some of the most talented players in college basketball. This draft included Ron Harper, Dennis Rodman, Del Curry, and many more. Among all these skillful players was a young talented man who was easily the best player of the class. This 22-year-old forward from the University of Maryland was best known as Len Bias. Len Bias was the second overall pick in the 1986 NBA draft. He was one of the greatest players of all time coming into the draft. He was built perfectly, standing at 6'8" and weighing 210 pounds. To top it off, he had tremendous basketball skills. This guy was on his way to stardom. He was considered by many to be the most elite forward to ever come out of college. He could score, rebound, and pass extremely well. Coach K of the Duke Blue Devils said that the two best players in the history of the ACC were Michael Jordan and Len Bias. At the time, Boston Celtics general manager Red Arbich wanted Len Bias to play for him. He had been after Bias since his sophomore year in Maryland, so following the Celtics' third championship, Bias was immediately drafted. For the young man coming from Maryland, this was a dream come true. This was also a big pick for the Boston Celtics, considering Bias would have given the Celtics room to rest their big three, specifically Larry Bird, who had constant back problems. This would also have allowed them to have a few healthier seasons while potentially building a stronger overall team. Everything seemed to be going in Len's favor. The dream team, the dream job, what could go wrong? Unfortunately, the dream quickly turned into a nightmare. Just 2 days after being drafted, Len Bias was pronounced dead. He was 22. Less than 48 hours after being drafted, Len said he was going out to celebrate his success with his former college friends. The following morning at 6:57 a.m., he was found on the floor of his room without a t-shirt and with no signs of movement. At first, his friends and teammates assumed that he was having a seizure. Paramedics were called and they came into the room in an attempt to revive him. Eventually, they had to take him to Leland Memorial Hospital. Just like that, he went from celebrating being picked number 2 in the NBA draft to being found unconscious and hoping he'd still be alive. News reporters, family, and friends were starting to show up at the hospital. Everyone started crying. At first, it went from Len Bias died to Len Bias died from a cocaine overdose. The entire basketball world was devastated. What happened? Nothing was making sense. Many couldn't comprehend his death. Even Larry Bird, Len's soon-to-be teammate, commented on his death, describing it as the cruelest thing I've ever heard. And that was the sad truth. A couple days following his death, doctors would announce that his official cause of death was cardiac arrhythmia. This condition was commonly related to the usage of cocaine. There were no other drugs or alcohol found in his system. Even though cocaine was a popular drug used and abused by many athletes at the time, it still came as a shock to many. But it was a hard truth. The news of a cocaine overdose turned the case into a criminal investigation. On June 30th, 1986, the Boston Celtics would honor Len Bias in a memorial service by giving his mother the number 30 jersey he never got a chance to wear. Before his death, Celtics scout Ed Badger said Len Bias was the closest thing to Michael Jordan to come out in a long time. Despite this statement, it's impossible to say whether or not Bias would have been better, let alone equivalent to Michael Jordan, especially in the NBA. But one thing's for sure, the two were the talk of the town when it came to college basketball. Both he and Len Bias would be compared as equals at the college level. These two were young, amazing basketball players, and the entire basketball community was aware of this. Jordan and Bias were without a doubt college basketball legends that had ridiculous amount of talent. However, Len was unbelievably strong, had unique athleticism, and had a jumper that Jordan had yet to show. Bias was one of the nation's most gifted athletes, and his high-flying dunks made him a highlight reel. However, over the years, many people would claim that it was his jumper that separated Len Bias from Michael Jordan, and could have potentially made him a better player than Jordan in the NBA. He was a two-time ACC Player of the Year and earned All-American honors in 1984 and 1985. Len Bias was a couple of inches taller than Jordan and had a bit more of a dominant presence on the court. On January 12, 1984, Michael Jordan and the North Carolina Tar Heels came face-to-face with Len Bias and the Maryland Terrapins. Sure, the Tar Heels would beat the Terrapins 74-62, but on a one-on-one level, it was actually Len Bias who held the advantage over Michael Jordan that game. Jordan scored a solid 21 points while Bias scored 24. Bias was dominating on both offense and defense. He seemed to have been stronger than Jordan in a few ways, such as rebounding and steals. He was tall and had long arms that did not hesitate to take anything from you. He performed like a madman when he played Jordan, and to this day, the game is one of the most memorable games in college basketball. Overall, when it came to raw statistics, it seems Len Bias and Michael Jordan were somewhat identical. However, Len Bias was more dominant. According to many fans at the time, other than MJ and Dominique Wilkins, nobody in the 80s attacked the basket like a young Len Bias. To many, if Len Bias had lived long enough to touch an NBA court, he would have been Jordan's kryptonite. Some even go as far as to say that Bias would have stopped Jordan from going to the NBA finals a couple of times. Unfortunately, we'll never know. With so much talent in these two individuals, it is very sad that they were not able to play each other in the NBA. Could you guys imagine how it would have been to see these two go head to head? It would have been like a young Kobe and LeBron going head to head. Would he have been one of the greatest NBA players to ever put on a Celtics jersey? Would he have broken NBA records? And most importantly, would he have been better than Michael Jordan? We'll never know.